Well, and it is now 8:05, time to kick off the MICAH St. Paul Virtual Bus Tour, 2020 Virtual Bus Tour, 2022. My name is John Slade. I live on the east side of St. Paul, and I'm the community organizer for the East Metro MICAH chapters, including the St. Paul chapter. And I'm tickled pink to be here with all y'all today. Our welcome is going to be given by our host, Kate O'Connell, and our faith reflection by Dina Stroman. Take it away, Kate.
Thank you, John. Good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to see you. MICAH is the Metropolitan Interfaith Council on Affordable Housing. We started in 1988 by people of diverse faiths who came together to address the growing number of people in our communities experiencing homelessness. Our mission is to ensure that everyone, without exception, has a safe, decent, accessible, and affordable home. We are a welcoming community, respectful, accepting, and loving, and treating others the way we would want to be treated in the similar situation. Our members are congregations and organizations that help to address the immediate needs of people in our community, providing support that includes prevention services, outreach, food, shelter, transitional and supportive housing, and affordable rental and home ownership options. In addition to providing these services, we advocate with local, state, and national policymakers to address systemic causes of homelessness, advocating for policy changes that encourage communities to build and preserve affordable housing that currently is in such short supply. Our work is based not only on our values, but also on listening to and working with the people who have experienced homelessness themselves and encouraging them to use their power and voice at decision-making tables and developing solutions to the current housing crisis. 70% of MICAH's board and staff are from diverse communities. Over half of our board and staff have experienced homelessness or housing crises or discrimination, or all of those. We organize in 6 regional chapters which meet monthly by Zoom: MICAH St. Paul, MICAH Anoka County, MICAH South Dakota County, MICAH Northeast Suburban, MICAH Housing All Suburban Hennepin, and MICAH Minneapolis. You are most certainly welcome to join us at MICAH St. Paul County chapter meetings on the 3rd Thursday at 5 p.m. and to sign up for our constant contact and newsletter. And now I turn it over to Dina.
Hello, I'm Dina Stroman, and I'm going to read a poem called When I Meet People, and then I'm going to add a few sentences. When I see people with darker or lighter skin than mine, I want to have skin of that color also. When I see people with head coverings, I want to do the same. When I meet people from different cultures, speaking different languages, I want to learn to speak those languages too. I want to be included and including, to see what they are seeing, to feel what they are feeling, to know what they are knowing. I seek to understand and be a friend and learn to trust and say what it is like to be me and see what it is like to be you and feel what it is like to be us. I think Paul Wellstone said, "We all do better when we all do better." Everyone here today is a potential friend. Let us all work together so we all do better. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dina. All righty. Well, I'm the tour guide on this here bus. Oh, here's MICAH. We want to just call out MICAH 6:8, calls us to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with God. And we've already done the mission. So the meeting is being recorded. You all got the notice on that. Please stay muted if you are called on. If you, by any chance, I should happen to mute you, sorry about that. You should be able to go back live again. We do have time in the agenda for some questions after each stop. Raise your hand on camera or click the raise hand button, which is something in your Zoom chat, or comment in the chat. And I'll be monitoring that, and we'll try and figure that out. If at any point the audio or video presentation seems choppy, you can turn off your video feed. Also, I'm not aware if any of our presenters are showing videos. If somebody starts showing a video, you can also take your camera off. And also, no spitballs. This is a professional bus, and we take things very, very seriously here. Although you can make side comments to people in the chat. I think that's been included. All right, so let's get on board, everybody. Get your virtual coffee, let's go. All right, we start over on the east side of our idealized St. Paul over here at the MICAH offices, and we come straight over idealized 94 down to Project Home, Interfaith Action at Provincial House. The presenter today is going to be Sarah Legal, and Project Home has done all of these things for many, many years. Many of our congregations have been involved, and we were involved in the kickoff of Project Home, but Sarah has continued that mission and made things happen, and it is now to you, Sarah.
Thanks, John. Oh, what a great morning. So I'm a little further north, but virtually on the bus with you. So we are so excited to have you here. You're pulling into the parking lot at the Provincial House, which is a building that we're leasing from the Sisters of St. Joseph. We worked really closely with the City of St. Paul and Ramsey County and the Sisters of St. Joseph, along with St. Kate's and Presbyterian Homes, to make a partnership between all of us to create a lease that Project Home could move into the Provincial House, which used to be space for all of the sisters before they transitioned and moved into Carondelet Village, which some of you are probably familiar with. So the building itself has been, I think it was built in 1929, but it has been kept up amazingly. It is just gorgeous. I know a few of you have come out for tours. I know City Council Member Jane's on the call, and Ramsey County Commissioner Trista is on the call. Have both come and seen the building, and I invite all of you too, if you want a physical tour, to actually hop off the virtual bus and come into the real world and come see us sometime. Just reach out to me. I'll put my info in the chat afterwards, so you can come reach out to me. So as you pull into the bus or into the parking lot, you're going to see our own bus. We were able to take some funds that we had, and we really talked with the families about what was important in this new space. And really, even though we're right off a really good bus line, the 74 is right on our corner, having a bus, especially when large families are trying to get somewhere, it's and you know, just day-to-day stuff, to have our own transportation to take families was really important. So that's where we kind of put some funds last year and got a nice, gently used bus for ourselves. And we've already taken 2 trips to community partners. We've taken families to Joseph's Coat, and we've also taken up to what's the name of the church? Arlington Lutheran, the Alley Shop. So we've taken families to get some winter clothing and things like that. A lot of folks always ask Project Home, Interfaith Action, do you take gently used clothing? And we actually say, no, we'd rather not. It's really hard to keep up used clothing, right? But we would rather teach our families to fish, right? Kids are constantly growing and, changing, and seasons are changing. They're always going to be in need of new, larger clothing as they grow. So it's really important to teach families the resources that are already in our community. That will help their dollars stretch, help create some of that stability in their family if they're not having to use their precious small income for those things. So we really want to, while the short time that they're with us, our average length of stay is only usually 2 to 3 months. We want to take that time to stabilize them as much as possible, bring them into a welcoming, safe environment, but also then start giving them some tools they might not have had before. Also, we learn from the families that stay with us. We're constantly learning of new resources in the community that one family will share with us, and then we can share with the other families. So it makes a great kind of synergy to get a lot of services kind of wrapped around the families, so that when they go back out in the world and stabilize, they've got a lot more supports than what they came in with. So as you pull in, you see that new bus, which is great. Then there's also a wonderful playground. The Sisters of St. Joseph let us build a playground on the property. There's a little smoking hut. Some of our families are smokers, so stressful time. I know they should stop, but I'm not going to tell them that while they're under the stress. And then we also have a great basketball hoop and a half court for the kids to play. That's always very busy on these beautiful fall days. And then when you come into our building, we use a little side entrance that's ramped. So if anyone has mobility needs, it's easy to get into. And then you come through 2 secure doors and into our first hallway, which I'll show you some pictures in a minute. But basically, there's a really long hallway and there's a nice laundry room off to one side. Families can use our washers and dryers and a nice big folding table, great space. And then down the hall to the left, there's a large dining hall. We serve up to 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then also, remember, most of our guests at Project Home are children. So we serve 2 snacks a day too, an after school snack right around 3 o'clock, and then also an evening snack about 7:30. So they can come on down to the dining room and have a nice little selection of great home cooked food. That is one thing that I will tell you, we always get high marks when we talk to our families and get feedback surveys from them, is the food. They really enjoy what's coming out of our beautiful kitchen. So really nice. So let me see if I can pull up our slideshow here in a minute. The only other thing I wanted to tell you before I start showing you pictures, so you can see all of this firsthand, is who we're caring for at the moment. So I'm actually on vacation right now, but just as I left on Friday, our population, we had 99 guests. We were full, so we can go up to 100 guests. So we had 99, and it was 29 families. But as I was leaving on Friday, we had a family of 8, 2 adults and 6 kids moving into their apartment. They had Section 8 when they came to us, so we worked with them to find a landlord that would take their voucher, and it passed inspection on Thursday, so they got their keys on Friday. We were so excited. And then another grandmother, a mom, and 2 kids, they got their apartment on Friday, Section 8. And then on Friday was a big day, let me tell you, a lot to rejoice about. We had another mom with 3 little kids, 2, 3, and 4, moved into her place with Wilder's Roof Program. That's one of the wonderful housing programs in our community that we work with often. And then this week, we have another mom moving in, a family of 3 moving into the YWCA's program. So let me share screen, and I'm going to show you some pictures quick. See if I do this right. All right, well, minutes are precious because you're going to be pulling off the bus in a minute. So am I back on your screen?
You are.
I'm so sorry, but you're going to have to visualize with me, okay? If you look at our website, Interfaith Action, just Google us, Project Home. There's actually a little PowerPoint that has the slideshow that we popped up. So you could see actual pictures, my smiling families. So I apologize. I'm up north and I don't know why that's not working. It worked the last bus tour, darn it. So just a few more things. But if you come into our building, you see that laundry room, you see the beautiful dining room. Some of the federal funding that came through the city and the county, we used to redo the kitchen. So when we moved in, the kitchen was not up to standards to use commercially. So we were able to redo the flooring and the lighting, buy a few new pieces of equipment, and now we serve over 25,000 meals each year. And that's a place, if any of you are interested in coming and volunteering on the weekend, we do need support in the kitchen, volunteer support. So we have someone who has their kitchen certifications. You just need to come on and help them. So that's a great place to volunteer. And then if you move up to the first floor, so that's the ground floor, and then we have living floors on first, second, and third floor. And those are of various size rooms that each have their own lock. So each family, when they come in through intake, will get a key and a fob. The fob is for the front door, the 2 security doors to get into the building, and then their key is just to their room, which I have to tell you, all the years we are so thankful for all the congregations that participated in Project Home and sheltered families in their church classrooms, their Sunday school classrooms, their synagogue social halls, all these different spaces, gymnasiums, all these different spaces. Sometimes we use cardboard dividers, cots, and porta cribs. And all of that in the moment was so life-giving for the families that stayed in those congregations. But gosh, now that we're in a little different setting, I really feel blessed to be able to give families that key when they first come in. And we have seen a huge leap in just the rest that families are getting. They don't have to get up so early in the morning and take a bus to a different location for day services and then back in the evening to churches and congregations. So that's been wonderful.
Sarah?
We miss our congregations though, so they can come visit.
Kate O'Connell says she's able to get the video on their website, and we started a wee bit early.
Okay.
So we'll see if we can.
Thank you, Kate. You're a godsend. Thank you. Okay. So, there's some pictures. Yep. So we can, so that's pictures of outside. That's one of the biggest blessings. When you pulled up in the bus, you'd see the beautiful outdoors, which I think has been huge for the families to have that great space. Here's some pictures of some of the rooms. There's various configurations. Like I said, we have a family of 8 that was staying with us and just moved into their housing on Friday. So that's, some of the rooms we have are very, very large for families. Lots and lots of restrooms. Remember, this used to be a home for the sisters. So, of course, they had all sorts of restrooms in there. And, this is a good one. So we have all these kind of community spaces, right? So we do tutoring in this lower level room. My staff puts out books and toys and games. There's a computer lab. That's our little reading nook area. So it's really planned for families. We really worked hard with the families that we had when we were moving in to make sure there was things that they requested in those spaces to make it just so for them. And that's a beautiful summertime outdoor shots of the playground and the basketball court. So, yeah. So look, in a couple of minutes, you got to see some visual. Thank you.
Great.
Thanks so much. So that was quick and out of sorts, but I can answer any questions that you might have too.
Excellent. Let's see here. I'm not seeing, Sue's given a thumbs up. That's nice. Are there any questions? I have one. How stable is your funding moving forward?
So right now, we're good through, I think it's June of 2023. So we've gotten funding from the city of St. Paul, and then also Ramsey County. We have not heard the big 3 RFP that came out. We haven't heard the final numbers, I don't think, for that, but we're working with contracts and stuff like that to make that work. So we know we're good for basically another full year. And then we're hoping to be working with that kind of group of the Heading Home Ramsey group in Ramsey County and the city.
Excellent.
To see moving forward what that will look like.
I see two other hands.
Really trying to focus on like, hey, are we showing the need, which we are. We're completely full, and then there are a number of families on the wait list trying to get in. So the need is definitely there for a family shelter of this size. And we also have 2 new rapid exit case managers working with the families who are doing an excellent job.
Right.
So the faster we can move families through, that always helps the system too, right? It lessens their trauma, the family's trauma, but also it allows more families who are sleeping in precarious situations to come in.
Yep.
So.
All right. I see Janelle and Sue, and we're going to give kind of the 3 minutes that we had in our schedule to this. So
Thank you.
Just a few. Janelle?
I just wanted to know how many people because all I see is more people of color that's on the picture. And I know that it is desperately need for people of color to interact with their own people, to act. How many employees do you got of American Black? That's what we call ourselves now. That's what I call myself now, as American Black. How many employees you got in there?
So I think it's about 73%, not quite 75%, 73% of our staff are people of color. Black, I'd have to really count through, but my 2 shelter managers are African-American Black. And so kind of like our core staff is 2 shelter managers, 2 housing workers, one's Latino, 2 are African-American, there's 1 white guy. And then my 2 family advocates who are really in charge of like all the children's programming and the family programming, help parents navigate getting kids to school and that sort of thing. 1 is Black and 1 is Latina. Sorry. 2 of my overnight staff, like I have, there's 5 overnight staff. They all take different shifts. 2 are Hmong, 3 are Black, and 2, there's 7. And 2 are white. So most of my staff is people of color. Yeah.
Excellent. Do families come to you through self-referral, coordinated entry, or agencies?
So coordinated access. So all the families who come through need to call 211 or go right to the county shelter team to get in and get on that list and come on in.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And Sue, do you have a quick question?
Yep,
before we get back on the bus? Yep.
Sure, thanks. And thanks, Sarah, for the great work. And so glad that Kate was able to pull up those pictures. And thanks to Sister St. Joseph in sharing that facility with you. Just to kind of follow up on what Janelle was asking, in addition to the diversity of staff, and I know that you listen to people as far as in the design and stuff like that. Do you know about how many people on your staff and on your board have experienced homelessness too? We want to make sure that people are using their voice and their power at the decision-making tables too.
Yep. So 2 of my staff are previous guests of Project Home. Oh gosh, we tell our guests, like, if they're interested in a position with us, we want to see them stable for like 6 months out in the community again in their own homes before they apply. And they've actually spoke to different groups about this, but 2 of our staff were with us in shelter like 3 and 4 years ago, and they've worked with us ever since. They're super stable and doing really well. And they give such amazing input. I'm always like, what do you guys think? Because even though they were guests, they come with a different perspective, because now after, 3 years of being stable, they've really kind of seen how both sides work, right? Like the power struggles between guests and staff, and how that looks and how we could merge better together. So, and then also 2 of our staff are in recovery, and they have been through halfway houses and other places of homelessness in their lives. So that's 4 total that I know of. So.
All right. Well, I'm so sorry to say that we have,
you.
things are calling to us. We have to get on to our next stop. Thank you, everybody, for making this one happen. All right. So I've moved the bus around to the north side of the building, and we're just taking a quick little bump up to Ramsey County. And by Ramsey County, we have the leader of Ramsey County, who has just dropped a big link in the chat. Commissioner Trista Matascastillo is the Ramsey County Board Chair. And today she is here to talk to us about all the things. Well, specifically focused on 30% AMI housing and some of the other shelter and homelessness issues. Trista is in the house. And let me stop sharing and put the focus on her as soon as I see her begin.
John?
There you are.
Okay. Hi, everyone. It's so good to be with you this morning, bright and early. I am always lovely to be with a group of housing and shelter advocates. This has been my work for many, many years. And so I come from this from long time, a heart for families and for people and civility around housing. So I'm currently the chair of Ramsey County Board of Commissioners. I'm also the vice chair of Heading Home Ramsey, and so deeply connected to the work. A couple of things, I dropped a couple links in the chat for future reading or if you want to go take a look, but I want to kind of ground us in where Ramsey County is right now on affordable housing. 4 years ago, when I came to the Board of Commissioners, we weren't really doing a lot around housing or shelter. We were administering pass-through funds that we got from the federal government, and that was kind of it. And all of those funds went to the suburban communities because of the way our Housing and Redevelopment Authority was established. Since then, we have shifted gears pretty drastically to include that we're not only administering funds to all of our cities, but we've also implemented an HRA levy, which what that means is we put a tax on so that we could create a pool of money ongoing to invest in housing in our entire community across Ramsey County. This was really important. We're the only county in the region that wasn't investing in affordable housing, and we really needed to do that. We spent some time going deep to say, what's the need? How great is the need? And what we identified through our economic inclusion plan, and that's the link I put in the chat, is it's really worth the read to take a look about what's the need in Ramsey County, what are our strategies and approaches to address the need, and it also tracks our success in getting there so that it is transparent and open to the entire community. But the need identified was that we are short 15,000 units. John, your hand is up.
Yeah, you're coming over a little choppy for folks.
Oh, okay.
I know. Maybe we can take the video off is not always a great solution, but
Yeah. I see what the problem is. Hold on.
Okay. How's that? Is that better? Aha. Okay. Every time I move my computer, I have to reset all my stuff. So, okay, that's good. I was just giving background. All the background I was giving is in the link that I posted in the chat. I think the greatest thing that's important to understand is that our need for affordable housing in Ramsey County is that we're short 15,000 units at the 30% AMI. So that's kind of folks that are at the lowest income levels. We just don't have enough housing, and which leads to all the other issues that we have around need for shelter, instability of families. You all are on this because you support housing and you understand why we have to start with housing. So Ramsey County has set a goal to create those 15,000 units and invest in that. We're doing that through our HRA levy, which will be an ongoing fund of about $11.5 million a year to add to the pool. In addition, we put $36 million of our federal dollars that we received through the American Rescue Plan into affordable housing. We are currently, in just 2 years, we are on our 4th round of distribution of those funds, and we're partnering with organizations across the county, to include the city of St. Paul, to make sure we're preserving existing affordable housing, as well as the creation of new affordable housing at those really deep levels. And so I put a couple links in the chat that you can take a look at, but you can follow and track what our plan is and where we are in the plan. In the last 4 years, we have gone from investing almost $0 into housing to $96 million into affordable housing, which is something of a huge shift, but really a need as we're trying to play catch up on investing in housing, and we continue to do that moving forward. I want to just also share a little bit around the shelter situation, because these two things are directly linked. They're not separate issues. And so we've been working really hard to think about how do we invest in a shelter system that works. And during the pandemic, though there was lots of things that went badly, there were some things and lessons that came out of the pandemic that really demonstrated how we can work differently and what we can do differently for our community. And the biggest learning was that giving people stable, individualized rooms with doors, like Sarah shared earlier with their facility, is a game changer for stability, from shelter to moving to permanent housing solutions. That costs a lot of money. And we demonstrated about how much it would cost to set up shelters in that model is far more effective. We went to the legislature and asked to help us fund that last year. We all held the legislative session last year ended, but we're going to come back again through the continuum of care and Heading Home Ramsey with the same ask, because we know it's a model that works. And that's $14.5 million a year for the next 5 years. So that as we bring on more affordable housing and housing solutions in our community, we can stabilize people in shelter in the right way that's effective, as opposed to the current system where people pop in and out and then they have to look for places to go during the day. That's not dignified. It's not respectful of our human condition, and it's not working. So I just wanted to address that. We have other elected officials. I saw Senator Pappas and Representative Hausman on this call, and they have been longtime champions with us to get this work and to get the funding done so we can stabilize our communities. We did receive $6 million from the governor's fund earlier this year from his own pot of money, which was really good. Unfortunately, it doesn't meet the full need, and it doesn't do the model shift that we, because it was one-time funding and not enough. It's really hard for our providers to completely pivot and shift to this new model of individualized rooms. It's going to take a little capital investment. It's going to take some change in how they're hiring staff and training staff. It wasn't enough to do that. So we put it to really good use in the support of day shelter space, as well as some expansion of hours at Catholic Charities and others. It doesn't get us to where we know works, and we've got the data to back it up. So that's why we'll be returning to the legislature for $14.5 million a year for 5 years with that model in mind, and have a broad coalition of folks. So that's a lot of information. I don't have pretty slides like Sarah did, but really excited to be here in partnership with you all to advocate and lift up our community, that we need affordable housing for everybody that's stable and dignified. And we're working to do that, and we're committed to that work. Open to any questions.
All right, I see them coming fast and furious. Lashella, who I missed at the last tour, we had to hustle you onto the bus quickly, but right. You're first in line, Lashella.
Okay, greetings, Trista. Long time no see. I know Trista through our being members of the same Women's Veterans Group, and if I remember correctly, Trista served several branches of the services. And I'm also the coordinator of the Black Veterans of America, although I'm not a veteran to women's groups because of my supporting interaction. And I got connected with the Women's Veterans Group through MICAH St, Watlov Phillips. And so I'm always asking you and other members that are on this tour regarding the veterans. Are veterans when they come to their shelters or at your level, are you also working and including veterans, letting them know that there are also veteran service coming out of the VA hospital, that there are certain programs set up for veterans, and veterans won't identify themselves unless you ask them for various reasons. And I would like to see a lot of literature around in these various locations where the unsheltered are. Like there's veterans rights booklet coming out of the Attorney General office. There are veteran courts set up. And there are even downtown Minneapolis, which one of our veteran groups have set up, where veterans can go and take showers and wash their clothes and things like that. And I don't think that veterans are, up front or have the information they need, and especially not identifying themselves. So at your level, are you actually saying the word veterans and whatever? And I know you to be very diligent in working and trying to include people. And that's where I'm coming from.
All right.
Veterans a group.
And we got 3 more questions after that. So Trista, to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Michelle. And from my work that our veterans do have special outreach. We have special outreach shelter and homeless outreach folks specifically for veterans. We also partner very closely with Minnesota Assistance Council for Veterans and our County Veteran Service Office. So we ask people as we're doing intake if they've ever served in the military. We get away from the term veteran because it has culturally different connotations for people who have served in the military. And so we start there so that we can get them connected to the services that might be available. So we're doing pretty intensive outreach to our military members.
All right. One of the other questions in chat, it's great that you're doing 30% AMI. There are people on 20, there are people on 10% AMI folks on the kind of the federal housing, can afford 60%.
30%, I meant 30% and below is where the county is focusing our dollars. So we're working at those 10, 20 and below because there are other funds that can get the 30, 40, 50 and 60. And so we're really looking at how do we offset to make sure we're getting down to our very lowest.
All right. Senator Pappas, you've got your hand.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for all your work. So I was door knocking the other day at Dunedin High Rise, which is public housing, and a gentleman told me that it's affordable housing, but some people had emergencies and they couldn't even come up with the rent to stay in public housing, and they were evicted. Likely that's doing things like emergency housing assistance to prevent homelessness and keep people in the affordable housing that we do have.
Yeah.
I don't know if Trista knows the answer to that in Ramsey County or if someone else does.
Yeah, so we do have emergency assistance dollars for that very reason through our financial assistance service. Anyone can go to one of our service centers or call the navigator line to help navigate that. I will share that the request and the need is higher than our ability to accommodate. So there is a real significant need in the community to have more of those dollars available, but also for our caseloads. The DHS recently changed how they're tracking and administering. So we do have quite a bit of a backlog. Right now, emergency assistance is taking 4 to 6 weeks. That's something that we're working on at the county level, but also it comes with a pretty significant change just in the last month from DHS and how it's processed. So this is a real need and something that we are going to have to lift up at the legislature as well, and really take a look at how we can get emergency dollars out the door in a fashion that recognizes the emergency and the timeline of the emergency. But there are emergency assistance dollars available. And there is a process. Unfortunately, it is not administered as fast as the need is demanding.
And if we are fast, Sue can get in her final question before we shiver you all back on the bus. Sue Watlov Phillips.
Thanks, and thanks, Trista, for all your incredible work throughout the years, and especially during COVID around the encampments. Do you want to ask kind of where you think encampments are and some of the policies around that? Obviously, we need to increase prevention dollars with the Family Homeless Prevention Assistance Program, our emergency assistance, emergency general assistance. And then the other thing is with a lot of landlords like Dominion and other for-profit developers raising rents to fair market rent level, it's driving a lot of our folks in the low-income housing tax credit where it's unaffordable. And so how we can make sure that the money that we're putting into affordable housing stays affordable for the long term at the incomes that people have available to them. So I know we have growing encampments across the Twin Cities. I'm working with the city of Minneapolis on some ordinances right now and just wanting to get your sense of kind of where you see things. Thanks.
Yeah, I would say that, this is something that we are working through as far as what does the policy look like in Ramsey County through Heading Home Ramsey. So that way we're centering the voices of people with lived experiences, our providers, and our policymakers together. Right now, we still have a policy in place in the city around there's got to be a place for people to go before we move an encampment. I think it's really important that we start with the fundamental notion that everybody deserves to have a stable, dignified place to live. And so we're working to provide that before we get to, encampment kind of policy stuff. And we're working through that. And I think that we're doing a relatively good job. It's not perfect. It's a difficult situation. We've got about 104 people at last count sleeping outside. We track that really closely. We're really trying to get resources to individuals and do the best we can with the resources that we have. I also wanted to add that the $6 million we got from the governor, I forgot to mention this, allowed us to be able to change our cold weather protocols. This is really important right now as the weather is getting cold. Previously, we expanded shelter capacity in short term if the weather went below 5, below 0, which is really cold. And we know that people can freeze to death at 60 degrees outside, right? Hypothermia can set in. So the money allows us to expand that. So now cold weather protocols come in at 0. It's still not enough, but it's what we have the capacity for expansion of shelter. And we think that's going to allow us to have that emergency expanded shelter open about 15 more days in the winter. It also allows the expansion of Catholic Charities expanding their hours of their shelter or their day program spaces to 9 p.m. so that we have a little better capacity in those situations as well.
All right, I am going to fit in Janelle Friedman Anderson has one question, and Janelle, it's you. Then we're done.
Okay. I just wanted to know because it's an ongoing situation since 2019. And they keep putting the money where people are not. I mean, it's not helping. People doesn't know that I'm from Minnesota, born and raised. Also, I had a book come out with homeless in Minneapolis with all the tent, where all the tent people was putting their stories in. And what I'm saying is that we reached out as Freedom from the Streets and No More Streets reached out to y'all many a times and asked y'all, can we help or can we get in there? And it seems like we can't help or we can't get in there, but y'all want to take our information down. And it is sad that we keep on having this situation, bumping heads. And the only thing we know that y'all, to get money or to get help or whatever, y'all keep putting people with drugs and alcohol up there. As you know, as I'm trying to get to Minnesota, back to St. Paul, because I love St. Paul. My family built St. Paul. And I have a struggle with St. Paul because they keep doing these things and they're not, and I don't feel like listening to the real people, even though I am not in the homeless situation anymore, but I am facing it very soon. I am struggling with my rent. And I don't want to be out there when I know that y'all is not making a difference and y'all not trying to or y'all saying y'all trying to, but every election year is something different. Y'all put up these hopes and dreams and goody things that's coming true, and it don't never come true because somebody get elected and it is not going to come true because they got elected. I just hope that y'all can work with us because we came a 501c3 just so we could get work, so we could get help because we was out there the first 2019. We wasn't trying to get in nobody's way. We was trying to help because we know the difference between homeless because we've been there, and everybody that's on my team is homeless or formerly homeless or on the verge of being homeless, and we don't want to see it no more as it was.
All right. You want to just give a quick response there, Trista?
Yeah. So, Janelle, we have actually been listening. We've got a couple folks from Freedom on the Streets that is on the steering committee from Heading Home Ramsey. We also have added them to the selection when we've done the RFP for funds on the evaluation team. We continue to have those seats open. It is public and open, and we invite everyone to participate. And you know, we're working the best we can. We have served hundreds of people from homelessness and from living outside into shelter. It's still a long way to go, and there are some folks who have been chronically homeless for a really long time that takes longer, but we continue to do that work and welcome your partnership.
And I hope that we will be able to, as I said, plant seeds here and make things happen. Thank you so much, Commissioner. And thank you everybody for your questions. Time to get on the next stop. We've pulled right into the middle of 94 here. So here we go. And we're zooming straight up onto the east side to Settled. Everybody who is in the Northeast chapter knows this because both of my chapters really wanted to hear about the good news. And Chris Nick is here today to talk about Settled. So here we go. And Anne. There we go. I can't hear you if you're trying to talk.
Okay, how's that?
Much better.
Yeah, I thought that I showed there as well. So this is what we see as we pull up, and we are incredibly excited to have that. And I'm having some trouble getting to the full screen share because of, but I'll just talk while I try and figure that out. So this is a focus on a very different population than we've talked about. We've heard about there are a number of people that are really at the bottom of that 30% AMI. And Settled is designed specifically and only to focus on people who've been experiencing chronic homelessness. And the Housing First model is fabulous for people and wonderful things coming out of that. But some research out of the University of Minnesota really led to this model, finding that for people that have experienced chronic homelessness or are experiencing that, they're often dealing with addiction, with mental health issues, that they've really suffered this profound loss of community and relationship and family. And so putting them into an apartment isn't always enough to solve the problem. So Settled is a model, and it's based on what we would say is community first instead of just focusing on housing. So this is on site of Mosaic Christian Community, which is a small church. They would describe themselves probably as a small and pretty poor church. But what the model does is really provide individual homes for these folks. So moving through things, as all of you know, finding housing is particularly hard for people who've experienced chronic homelessness. We talked about some of the challenges that they face. And so Settled has a model where they work with faith communities to create these sacred spaces made up of tiny homes to create relationship. And there's no government cost to this model. So as we move through that, oh my goodness, I'm having serious problems advancing here. I'll do it this way. So as one of the parishioners said, here you see a picture of Mosaic, which is located on Wheelock Parkway, right by Victoria. We can make room. And so they've chosen to do that. So individuals or couples live in their own home. They're fully heated and have electricity. And one thing that's really key to this is a third of the people living there are people like all of us. We're choosing to leave our current situation and live in community with folks who have really had some struggles. So a third of the people are coming out of stable housing, and then 2/3 are not. And so residents have the opportunity for purposeful work. They're compensated for that work, and they really work with residents to figure out, do they want to be a gardener? Is there a parishioner that might have something that works for them? So now we're going to walk through a couple of the homes. Each of these have been built by a different faith community. So there are 6 homes on site at Mosaic, and each of them is built. These all happen to be by churches, but certainly open to other faith communities as well. So you'll see the furnishings are different as we go through them, but are all designed not to have like mini versions of everything, but really to have a welcoming open home here. So here's one you see where the sleeping area is at ground level. The next one you see, that's raised, and there's a desk area underneath them. All of them have a table to eat. They have extra chair to invite people in for hospitality. You see the hot plate here. The kitchens all look different since they're donated by different folks. And these can be built for about $25,000, including the spices, like everything. And that's all done by whatever community does that. There's a parish in Forest Lake, an ELCA congregation that is going to be looking forward to having a community of about 18 homes for veterans who've been experiencing homelessness. And instead of having a mission trip for their young people, they had a week in the parking lot, and they built one of the homes. So you can get a good sense of what they look like. This is one of the homes for the people who are the intentional volunteers, and those are a little bit larger, so that if people are really struggling or having a difficult time, they invite them in. So instead of having them move into an apartment building where people will call the police if they're swearing in the hallway or being disruptive, here they have people who've been trained in trauma and de-escalation and have really gotten to know them and welcome them. And the goal is really to create a community where we're surrounding people with love. Then there are common spaces in the church. We can see the whole list here: showers, internet, a communal kitchen where people can choose to cook if they don't want to cook in their home, and private meeting rooms if they need to meet with a lawyer or caseworker. Here you see one of the bathrooms. Here's the dining space, and just off to the right there is the kitchen area. And so there's really 5 components of this. One is intentional neighbors, the permanent homes, and this is, we're doing work at the legislature, and it really is surrounding that permanent homes, because these are too small to fall within the building code. They're considered more like an RV, and although we know plenty of people live in RVs, Minnesota law doesn't really recognize them as a source for permanent housing. And we want to be able to say to these people that have not had a lot of stability, if you follow the rules and pay your minimum $200 a month rent, which we provide opportunities to work that off, you can stay here as long as you want to. Cultivated place, that's that community that we're creating, purposeful work, and then supportive friends. So people are assigned not only individuals, kind of a mentor one-on-one, but also a community of other people that are doing things. I'm going to be over there helping people get their birth certificate and their social security card, because that's something that people experiencing homelessness often no longer have. So I wanted to do a special shout out to, I know Councilmember Prince is here, maybe there are others here, but St. Paul approved this. So we're still working at the Capitol, but we got approval from St. Paul. And so our community's open. And this was the open house. So you see people from the parishes that built the homes, people from the neighborhood, which has been really supportive. They view this as a community asset, and a number of other folks as well. So you can see just kind of what the homes are like and what the community's like. Here you get a little bit of sense, just one at night, so you can see a little bit of when they have the lights up between the homes and see what they look like. I really love this one, which is just a reminder that it's on the site of a faith community, and they can choose to be as involved in that or as uninvolved as they would like. And we have a number of other homes ready to go. So we have communities in Lakeville, Maple Grove, Duluth, Forest Lake, I mentioned, a couple others that I'm forgetting that are interested and would like to have these on site. And so we'll be continuing to talk to folks at the Capitol about please approve this form of housing. It's just been wonderful to see the people who haven't had a place to live. One of the residents, his mother died when he was 8. His dad's an alcoholic, basically abandoned him when he was 12, and he's been homeless ever since. And to see him look at the home that's going to be his with a front step and a key. Sarah talked about the key and just how wonderful that is. It's been really great to talk to folks. This does not go through coordinated entry. Instead, if a faith community is interested, then the directors, the staff of Settled go out and they learn who's currently living in that area without shelter. And so they're walking the streets, they spend nights out, they talk to advocates. The people at Mosaic at that settlement were identified through were people with Walking with a Purpose, and then also talking from people at the parish that are familiar with what's going on there. So if people have any existing relationships in that area, we want to make sure that we're supporting those as much as we can. So we have other communities ready to go if we can get approval for them. So if you want to learn more, go to settled.org. And then they said, well, what can we do to support Settled? Always donate funds, get your faith community involved if they're interested. And an unusual ask for this tour, really talk to your senator and representative to support this model, since we're really trying to get this recognized as another form of housing. And anybody's welcome to come help build a home, to come tour, to teach a skill to residents there, or whatever you might have to give. So we are really excited to be, people are moving in, and not everybody's moved in yet, but as of last week, people started moving into the homes, and it's been really great. So I'm available for questions, but you can always go to settled.org or call with any, but it's a very small slice of this homeless community that we're targeting. And I think doing it in a really effective and really human, dignified way. So thanks for letting us be part of your tour.
Oh, and thank you, Anne, for letting us make up a little bit of the time. I see LaTanya who has a question, and then Janelle. LaTanya, if you're talking, we can't hear you.
Hello, thank you very much. I want to say that I'm sorry my background is a bit noisy, but I thank you so much for this. I'd like to know how many square feet are these new houses? And I'd like to...
They're all under 400.
And how do people apply for that?
Okay, so...
under 400?
Under 400, they're small. They're really small. I got to say, they're incredibly well insulated. I was in one last week as it started to cool off, even without the heat on. People don't apply in the way that you typically think of it, because we're really trying to focus on that community area. But once, like, for example, this at Mosaic, once they're set up, they're continuing to talk with people who are experiencing homelessness in that area. And so people are like, yes, I'm interested. So they already have people lined up. Like somebody I met, she said, I'm number 7. So, there's 6 houses. She knows she's number 7. But we want to be really careful about who we bring in, because they're on the site of a faith community, and it's really important that the community itself works. So although they do background checks and things, it's very common for people to have some kind of criminal conviction. That's not disqualifying, but they don't want one for somebody who's been convicted of selling drugs, for example. And then, they want to talk to advocates in the area to just get a good sense of who will make up a good community. And then another thing is, like, say that you and I, Tanya, we've been living on the street and kind of looking out for each other. We're cousins, whatever. We want to make sure that those existing relationships can be preserved. And so, it's one of the really awful things I think that sometimes happens with the system now is there are people who are connected and looking out for each other, and my number comes up and I'm out in Maplewood and your number comes up and you're in St. Paul. And, how do we make sure that we keep those relationships together? So as they're working on that, they're really trying to figure out,
thank you.
How do we make sure that works?
All right, we got about 2 minutes. Thank you, LaTanya, for your question. Janelle.
If y'all don't know that I am one of the vision community people, I want to say guinea pig of just getting answers read and stuff. We got a little tiny house in Minneapolis, and I know that the one in St. Paul, that the one right now was with Dr. Wash and all that story. But can you tell that story about how you and Dr. Wash was together and separated? Because people ask that question all the time.
Okay, I actually can't answer that. The founders of Settled could probably answer that, but I do want to point out that both Settled and Envision came out of research from the University of Minnesota. So they're approached by Hennepin County Medical Center about what do we do with these people that are coming in, and one of the stories was someone who came in because their catheter had frozen. And that's not the state we want to be, right? Mm-hmm. That's not who we want to be. And so the models, Envision has a little bit more of a focus on people with ongoing health issues. And this has more of a focus, maybe, the chronic homelessness, people with mental health and addiction. There's a lot of crossover. And they're both fabulous models. And they're both really different and creative ways to say, how do we address this community that's really struggling and that really feels pushed aside often by a lot of our communities. So I'd love to connect with you offline, Janelle, and talk about things, but I can't answer that direct question. But.
All right. And thank you for that and for the time. We are, yes, we can do better than frozen catheters. And we are now going to hop back onto the bus. And thank you to Settled. And all of this will be available, of course, once this recording is done. And we're over here. All right. We just got to zoom a little bit over from Settled on the east side to the Cambric Senior Apartments. And living it at Cambric, Katherine Banbury, who is our next presenter, and she's got a lot of stuff to talk to us about. Whoa, go back. What I wanted to do was stop sharing so that we could get Katherine online.
Good morning, everybody. This is just delightful to hear everybody's report and questions and answers. I am so passionate about affordable, stable housing for everyone. John thought it would be useful for me to give a little context into my journey into becoming a tenant advocate. So I'll do that. I'll just give you kind of how I got into this. I'm newly employed at Homeline, like less than a month. Just thrilled. But we'll back it up and just give you a little bit of context, and then happy to take questions. I moved to St. Paul, the East Side, Dayton's Bluff specifically, 2004. And I'm a yoga teacher, and my partner is a bike mechanic, and we're heavily into supporting our community with community gardening and composting, and I cook for my neighbors. So we've never been committed to acquiring wealth. We're acquiring community. So we found an affordable house on the East Side, which was actually a original horse carriage house, which our landlord turned into a people carriage house via Save Big Money at Menards. So it wasn't, it looked great from the outside. The inside was definitely, not of the highest quality, but he promised us that he was out-of-state landlord, that if we didn't require any maintenance, that he would not raise our rent. And of course, we didn't know that was illegal, but again, we needed low rent. So that's what we went with. And over the years, of course, not taking care of a property, it started falling apart. And in particular, after 12 years of living there, the roof caved in. So we were displaced, and I found a job 3 hours away in Wisconsin, cooking at a retreat center. And my partner lived in a house up the street. So we were apart for 3 years, trying to find another affordable house in St. Paul. And right across from the house that we lived in, where the roof caved in, there was an empty lot there for the whole decade that we lived there. And we called it the Field of Dreams, because we used to walk through that lot to go to Sweet Hollow, to the cafe, or for a walk, or to get the paper, because we always found like little treasures or whatever. And then all of a sudden, when I was in Wisconsin, we heard that a corporation was going to build affordable housing on our Field of Dreams. And we thought, oh my gosh, we've never rented from a corporation, a little bit hesitant about that, but it's on the Field of Dreams. So lo and behold, after 3 years being out of St. Paul, came back, means tested to get into this Dominion building. Took about a month to do all that. I quit my job. I gave notice in my apartment. We move in, and a week later, we're signing the paperwork with the property manager, and she raised the rent $100. Well, not she, but Dominion. And we just looked at each other. We said, no, that's not the rent. And she said, oh yeah, it's not our fault. It's HUD. They raise, and there's nothing we can do. So we felt like, what the heck? We really didn't have a choice. We had to take it. And it was just one thing after the next. My neighbors that I was meeting, this is a senior building, 55 and older, and my neighbors were getting evicted one after the next after a couple of years of living in this apartment building, because the rent, they're allowed to raise. Dominion is a Section 42 LIHTC building, and they can raise the rent according to the area median income, but they don't have to raise it that high, but they do every single year. So it was just heartbreaking. We had neighbors living in our couches because they had no idea where they were going to go. 60, 70, 80-year-old people. I could not stand this, but I knew nothing about housing. So as a sole person, I started working with my city council person. I was contacting the mayor, the attorney general, the housing commissioner, the state legislators, the federal legislature, anybody I could think of. And really, I was getting nowhere. Nothing was helping until I had worked with Homeline previously when our roof caved in, and I got to know a couple of the tenant advocates there. And they contacted me and said, I bet you're going to be interested in, we are putting together a rent stabilization ordinance, and we need to collect signatures to get on the ballot. And I said, I am in. I have tried everything. Nothing has worked. I can't bear to see another neighbor either being economically evicted or evicted from not being able to pay the rent at all. So it was incredible. Grassroots, amazing group of people. I think we needed like 8,000 signatures, and we got 10,000 signatures just standing in front of the co-op or going to another grocery store and getting signatures from people, and really explaining to people that what this is really about is that right now in St. Paul and in many cities, it's like the wild, wild west. There's no regulation whatsoever for tenants. And that's what this was all about, so that people could be assured to have a stable and affordable housing. So we won. It was just fabulous. We won in November of last year. We had the rent stabilization ordinance. People were thrilled. 3% cap, some other items in the ordinance. And the mayor decided that he wanted to put together a task force and consider the idea of a 20-year new construction exemption from the ordinance. And I was picked to be on that task force. And it was very difficult to be on it. There were only a handful of renters, because most of them were bankers, investors, developers. So it was stacked against us to begin with. But I learned so much. We had so many policy people coming. It's facilitated by Cura. And we had so many policy people coming in and explaining kind of like what's redlining, like why is our state, so depressed in terms of housing, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it was incredible. And after that, really my volunteering job was to save the ordinance. So that was a big part of what I was volunteering, is organizing the 8 St. Paul Dominion buildings into tenant associations and teaching people how to show up at these public hearings where the city council was working on amending the ordinance 2237. And, it's a real skill to be able to stand up when you know nothing about this and speak your truth for 2 minutes to a legislative body. But people did great, and they spoke from their hearts. And I felt like we got such a picture of what is going on with our housing. Like, so many people, either they are evicted, homeless, or they are so stressed out about their housing. So that was incredible to be able to be part of that. And then the other piece that I worked on was the Metro. All the Dominion buildings in the Metro were not under the protection of the rent stabilization ordinance in St. Paul, and their rent all went up 12.5%, and they had no recourse to appeal. So it was horrible. I mean, but the good part about it is we came together. It was like 15 of these buildings came together, created a tenant association, and we did picketing, protesting, pressers to really, get out there. Like, what is this so-called provider of affordable housing doing to people? Low-income people, fixed income seniors, people of color, disabled, just out of control. So I was working, on these 2 fronts, and it really got to the point where it was a full-time job. Even though I have a business, I'm a culinary chef and health and wellness practitioner, but I'm literally working 2 full-time jobs. And I just felt like this was so meaningful and so empowering to people to take this in their own hands. From my own experience of trying to do it by yourself and fight the system never worked, but really to come together as a grassroots, it, really made such a difference, and we made such progress with the ordinance. So I decided I want to do this professionally. And I really believe that I need to find a nonprofit agency that will house this work, this Dominium, specifically Dominium work. And so I pitched it to Homeline, and the director was like, well, I know you're doing great work out there, Katherine. I'm not really surprised, but let me see if I can get some funding. And then just last month, called me back and said, okay, you want the job. So it's so satisfying and gratifying, and I'm continuing to learn more and more and more, but to really be a part of this grassroots movement, to ensure that people are taking this in their own hands and really trying to make a difference. Some of the things I've done just over the last month is try
We've got about 2 minutes left.
Okay, tried to get a little more educated about what's called the qualified allocation process, which is, you know, an obscure state process for tenants, but it really is how developers are, you know, approved to be a provider for affordable housing. So I led some workshops about this, and we showed up as tenants to talk to the state about how the affordable housing really is not affordable. It's not working. And, you know, I would just say as a Dominion tenant, my rent has gone up 30% since I moved into my field of dreams. And so, for instance, a 2-bedroom apartment is now $1,425 for a 2-bedroom apartment. A 1-bedroom apartment is $1,200. Does that sound affordable to you? And it doesn't include utilities. So it's a revolving door. Dominion should not be approved as a provider because they are a for-profit and they are not providing affordable housing, let alone not taking care of the properties.
And one of the other things that you did, and there's so much of the story, was challenge Dominium's contention that they had to raise their rent 7 or 8%.
Exactly.
And the administrative ruling on that was that they could increase it some, but not as much as they had wanted. And so that's the article that we linked in the Pioneer Press. And sorry for the paywall. Is dealing in that you and there was another Dominion tenant were kind of the leads on that. And so I know that Sue Watlov Phillips was supposed to get 15 minutes at the end of this. We've only got 7 minutes as a whole. So I'm going to give her, we're going to go 5 minutes over. Sorry about that. If you need to jump off the bus in the middle, these virtual buses, you can actually do that. But do we have a question, a quick question or two for Katherine? And thank you so much for making the time this morning. And I'm seeing, let's see. I don't see anybody's hand. But one thing I do want to point out is that Dominium wanted and didn't get what they wanted, or said that they had this, they needed this and they got that. So that was a really good thing that they did not get what they asked for, and that they went for 12.5% everywhere else and 6.5% or 6% in St. Paul. So really great work, both defending the ordinance and making that happen. And so,
yeah, and I would just say one last thing, John, is again, what the ordinance afforded us is the recourse to appeal. As I worked with my Metro people, they had no recourse to appeal the 12.5%. So it really, heartened us that through the rent stabilization ordinance, we had that option to do that.
Yep. And MICAH has been really consistent that we oppose the 20% look back new construction exemption. We oppose the affordable housing exemption, and we oppose the self-certification for 8%. So so glad that Homeline is continuing to carry forward that work, and looking forward to working more in the future. So I guess it's time for me to grab everybody else and hop them onto the bus. Thank you again, Katherine. And now we drive from Cambric to the state capitol with a side trip to the federal. And Sue Watlov Phillips, our executive director, has 9 minutes. Thank you, Sue. I'm going to highlight you, Sue. There we go.
Thanks, John. And thanks, Katherine. MICAH has been very actively involved, obviously, with the rent stabilization in both Minneapolis and St. Paul, and also testified, as you were testifying, on the qualified allocation plan and support the 3% being the limit for folks that get the low-income housing tax credits. So it's very, very important. So thank you again for being on the bus tour today. Again, I'm Sue Watlov Phillips, the Executive Director of MICAH. and past president of the National Coalition for the Homeless, and been working on housing and homeless issues for over 55 years. And so we've talked about that this was going to be what was going to continue to happen, as we have been saying that we need to invest in affordable housing in our communities. I experienced homelessness as a teenager. And so this is both a personal thing for my family and for myself, as we have continued to work to make sure that everyone has a safe, decent, accessible home that's affordable for them at their income. As Janelle is on our MICAH board and has helps us to utilize that terminology as opposed to affordable housing. What can people actually afford? So we're trillions of dollars behind in what we need to be investing in housing. We have put those types of dollars into home ownership for many of us that are on the Zoom call and bus tour today, but we have not done that into housing that is affordable for people at very low incomes, especially at the 0 to 30% of median income. So elections matter. And so encourage you to take a look at the questionnaire that I've put into the chat a few times about how different state senators and representatives will respond if they are elected to the housing and homeless crisis that we have in this state, and encourage you, as you also are making decisions about your federal policymakers also. Of course, MICAH is nonpartisan. We will give you the information and encourage you to use your God-given voice and power in making sure that we are electing people that will be about the common good and to ensure that everyone has a safe, decent, accessible home that's affordable for them. On the federal level, with the National Coalition for the Homeless and over 200 other organizations across the country, including MICAH and my consulting company, we have launched the Bring America Home Now campaign. This is a multi-trillion-dollar response to a 5-year decade of growing homelessness in the country. This is the longest episode of growing homelessness since the colonial days. And so we need to stop this, and we need to say that everyone counts and everyone needs a home, and that we don't treat people like trash and sweep them away or bulldoze them away, but rather we get people into homes. So the 6 major focuses are housing, health, livable incomes, which include both employment, unemployment, as well as public assistance, education and training, civil rights, and racial equity. All of these slides are up on our MICAH website under the policy section, so encourage you to take a look at that. Also, I put the link to the Bring America Home Now campaign. Encourage your organization to join us on that. We have a number of things happening on the federal level. In addition to Bring America Home, as many of you know, that we are in a continuing resolution right now, which means we did not pass the budget for fiscal year 23, which we are in. So the fiscal year for the federal level is October 1 to September 30th. So we did not pass those budgets. So we're still working off of the spending levels of last year, of fiscal year 22. We need to pass the highest level of funding for fiscal year 23. The president has in his budget 200 housing choice vouchers. The House has 140,000 housing choice vouchers, and the US Senate has 5,000. So we are pushing for the highest level of housing across all the different areas in the budget. We have some immediate threats. We have an organization called the Cicero Institute that's been pushing legislation that criminalizes people experiencing homelessness. And so in Tennessee, it's a felony. If you're homeless, in Missouri, you can't use your homeless dollars to do shelter or housing. You have to put folks into treatment, which is also against the law, and both HUD as well as the Department of Justice are pushing back on all of those. But we need to be very aware that we need to make sure that we are creating opportunities to prevent homelessness and get people back into housing as quickly as possible. Some of the pieces of legislation that are being considered right now for long-term solutions: Family Stability Opportunity Voucher Act and the Ending Homelessness Act. Both of those would make a significant increase in the number of housing choice vouchers that could be used both for rental and for home ownership. The American Housing and Economic Mobility Act would add $44.5 billion to our National Housing Trust Fund and expand fair housing protections. The Eviction Crisis Act, as we were talking about earlier, the importance of having prevention. This would be somewhat similar to the funding that we had through the CARES and the American Rescue Plan dollars. but it would be more flexible. This would become a permanent program of prevention on the federal level. And then also MICAH has worked a great deal on fair housing and on improvements to that, and making sure that people are not being discriminated against because of military status, veteran status, or their source of income. So people not being discriminated because they have a housing choice voucher or some other subsidy. So those are all bills that are currently have been introduced and that we are continuing to support as we're moving forward. On the state level, in 2021, we passed the local homeless prevention aid. Representative Aisha Gomez passed that. She is the chair of the Homeless Prevention Committee. And this basically addresses helping to make sure our families with children and our youth up to age 24 have additional rental assistance. And in Ramsey County for this year, coming up in fiscal year 20, in calendar year 23, Ramsey County will have $2.47 million per year for the next 5 years. This is local aid that comes directly to the communities. And so we're encouraging the county to, as we are all the counties in the metro area, to use their American Rescue Plan dollars to front load the dollars, because you get reimbursed in July and in December to be able to put this into place. And so again, these dollars can be used for rental assistance for over 2 years for families, as well as for youth that are living independently. And we just encourage that we can get this program up and going right away on January 1st. In regards to our policies for MICAH going into the 23 session, they're very similar to the 22 session. We left when our House and Senate left and adjourned, they left $12 billion on the table. We think that that is horrible, and that we need to be about the common good and be sharing those resources and making sure that people are staying in housing and getting out of encampments and into housing and out of shelters and into housing and building a lot more housing. So our push is to ensure that the voice and power of people who have experienced homelessness or housing crisis are at every decision-making table, design, implementation, running the programs, evaluation of the programs. That we will continue to work on the lead safe home bill to address lead paint poisoning. 1 out of 3 homes in Minnesota has lead paint. If you are poisoned by that with a child under 6, you have a good chance of becoming disabled for the rest of your life. It's irreversible. And so this is a great concern of our children. About 700 children in Minnesota become poisoned, mostly from lead paint each year. We want to continue to have racial equity and equity across all of our different systems and protecting the civil rights of all folks and not criminalizing people experiencing homelessness. Our focus is at that housing for people at 0 income to 30% of median income. We support Beacon's Bring It Home, which would be $1 billion in rental assistance per year. We also support livable incomes for people that are employed, unemployed, and on public assistance. And we want to make sure that all of us are a welcoming community. So in our regional groups, that's what we are about, is being a welcoming community and creating housing opportunities that provide everyone an opportunity to have a home, including folks that need second chances and mercy, that have struggled with addiction, mental health, physical health, criminal, and rental activities. MICAH will continue to be involved with Homes for All, and I will be jumping off this call and going right into a Homes for All call in just a few minutes. So with concluding here today, as Pope Francis said in 2015, we can find no social or moral justification, no justification whatsoever for the lack of housing. We must demand that all of our systems and organizations do what is needed to guarantee everyone, without exception, has a safe, decent, accessible home that's affordable for them at their income. We want to thank you so much for being a part of the virtual bus tour today. Encourage you to be involved with our regional groups, and we will be doing a policy breakfast, probably virtually again, in February. So thank you again. I'm going to turn it back to John to close us out.
All right. Well, all I have to say is thank you, Sue, And thank to all the folks who are here, to Kate and Dina for kicking us off, to all of our presenters, Sarah, Trista, Ann, and Catherine. I can see that a number of you have leapt off of the emergency exit at the back of the bus. I hope your parachute deployed well. And I wish that everybody who was in housing had a parachute that could deploy like that. So thank you all. We will see you again the next time. All right, bye now.
Thank you. Bye-bye. God's blessings.